Welcome to PB Exact Essentials. My name's Chris, and this is part 2, where we're going to discuss the Sangoma phones and how to provision them to PB Exact. Okay, let's go ahead and start off with an overview of the various Sangoma phone models available. First, we have the Sangoma S300. This is an entry-level phone. It features 2 programmable line buttons. It can have up to 2 SIP accounts registered, and it does full duplex speakerphone as well as 5-way conferencing. This phone has dual Ethernet ports on the back of the phone so that you can come in from the network and then out to a PC or another device. And this also works along with the rest of the Sangoma phones with the zero-touch provisioning, which we will talk about in just a little bit. Next, we have the Sangoma S500 phone. This is the next step up from the 300. This features 28 programmable soft keys. It's got 4 buttons down each side of the display. The display itself is a 3.5-inch full-color display. It has full duplex speakerphone, 5-way conferencing, and features dual gigabit Ethernet ports on the back of the phone. Finally, we have the Sangoma S700. The S700 has 36 programmable soft keys. You get 5 buttons down each side of the display. The display itself is a 4.3-inch full-color display. This also features full duplex speakerphone, 5-way conferencing, and dual gigabit Ethernet ports on the back of the phone. Now, if you need some additional expandability, both the S500 and the S700 models can be expanded with the EXP100 expansion module, also known as a sidecar. Now, this expansion module features 40 programmable soft keys. You get 10 buttons down each side of the sidecar, and then you get 2 page keys, so you can jump back and forth between 2 separate full pages of programmable buttons. Now, you can daisy chain up to 6 of these for a total of 240 additional programmable buttons for either the S700 or the S500. The programmable keys can be BLF buttons, so you can see the status of other people's extensions, but they can also be phone apps such as call parking, conference rooms, call forwarding, visual voicemail, and so much more. So this is a great way to expand the functionality of the S500 or S700, especially if you have someone such as a receptionist who's going to be doing a lot of call routing as part of their daily job duties. All of the Sangoma phones also have a headset port so that you can work with some of the more common and more popular headsets out there, such as Jabra and Plantronics. Now, they can be wired or wireless headsets, but if the headsets support EHS or electronic hook switch, you're going to need the Sangoma EHS30 adapter in order to make that electronic hook switch function properly. So now it's time to provision these phones to the PB Exact server. This can be done one of 2 ways. You can do it manually, which involves either entering the IP address or FQDN of the provisioning server, which is the PB Exact UC, into the phone itself, or by utilizing option 66, or you can use Sangoma's zero-touch provisioning to quickly and efficiently get these phones attached to PB Exact without actually having to touch the phone's interface at all. Now, I'm going to show you both ways. However, let's talk about zero-touch provisioning first. All Sangoma phones feature zero-touch provisioning, but what is zero-touch provisioning exactly? Every phone, when it leaves the factory, has a Sangoma-signed secure certificate that is unique to the phone. When you get the phone and you plug it into your network and it receives an IP address from DHCP, it reaches out to Sangoma's redirect server, which is a cloud-hosted server used for zero-touch provisioning. Now, when it reaches out to that Sangoma cloud server, it authenticates based on the securely signed certificate of each phone and the phone's MAC address, so that you know that this is an authentic Sangoma phone and it's securely connected to the redirect server. Once your phone has successfully authenticated with the redirect server, it then looks up your PB Exact information and the PB Exact that the phone has been assigned to in the Sangoma portal. That means that the phone receives either the internal or external IP address or FQDN for the PB Exact UC server that it is supposed to connect to. It then takes that information and reaches out and tries to get a configuration from that PB Exact server. Now, Once it has done that, there's two ways that the phone can receive its information. If you have entered in this phone's MAC address on an extension and said, hey, I've got an S500, it's this MAC address, and it's assigned to extension 4000, well, then this phone will automatically download all of its configuration information from the PBExact UC server, and it will configure itself as extension 4000. Now, alternatively, you can not provide an extension to the phone, and you can say, here's the IP address of the server that you're supposed to connect to, and when it actually connects, the phone gets a login internal and login external button displayed on the display screen. That means that you can click login internal, for instance, and you can then enter in the extension number and the voicemail password for the extension that you would like this phone to become. It then sets itself as that extension and downloads all of that extension's configuration information and registers to the PBExact UC server. So let's take a closer look at all of the steps necessary to get these phones successfully provisioned to the server using zero-touch provisioning. In order to set up a phone for Sangoma zero-touch provisioning, the first thing that you need to do is log into the Sangoma partner portal at portal.sangoma.com. So once you've opened that up in your browser, go ahead and log in. And from the main screen, you want to choose Cloud Services, Sangoma Phones, Register Phone. When you get to the Register Phone page, you have two options. You can register a single phone by entering in the MAC address, or you can bulk import up to 50 phones at a time using a CSV file. For our purposes, I'm just going to register one phone, so I'm going to click in the Register One Phone field, and I'm going to enter this phone's MAC address. Now, if you're going to be provisioning a large number of phones on a regular basis, I would highly suggest investing in a barcode scanner, and that way you can simply grab your phone, scan the back, and the MAC address of the phone is entered into the field automatically. This works both in the Sangoma Partner Portal as well as within PBExact itself. Once you've entered the MAC address of the phone, you click the Edit button that's just to the right of that field, and you can enter in some more details about the phone. What we want to do here is make sure that we check the box next to Redirection Enabled, and then we can choose if we want to redirect it based on the IP or FQDN, the fully qualified domain name of the PBExact server, or we can actually register it to a specific deployment, assuming that you have entered in the PBExact's deployment details elsewhere in the Sangoma portal. For our purposes, I'm just going to use IP/FQDN. The provisioning protocol that we're going to use is HTTP, and then I'm going to put in the internal IP address of my PBExact server, which is 192.168.254.30:83. 83 is the port that is used for HTTP provisioning in the PBExact UC. Once you've entered in that information, go ahead and click Submit, and that phone has now been added to your Sangoma portal. Now while I'm in here, I'm also going to register one more phone, Register Phone, and that's going to be the S500 series phone, because I'm going to set up the S300 phone with an extension already given to the phone, and I'm going to set up the S500 with no extension so that I can show you how to enter in the extension information manually once the phone has already been provisioned to the server. Now before we set up our extensions, we're going to want to make sure that we do a couple of things in the Endpoint Manager. Just a couple of quick configuration checks to make sure that the Endpoint Manager is ready to receive the phones that we're about to provision to it. Now, I'm not going to go over the entire Endpoint Manager setup. We're going to do that in the next video. However, there are a couple of just things that you need to check for in the Endpoint Manager before you actually start provisioning phones. So to get to the Endpoint Manager, click on Modules, and under Settings, all the way at the right-hand side, you'll find the Endpoint Manager. Go ahead and click on Endpoint Manager, and when that page comes up, a pull-out menu will come out of the right side of the screen, and you want to click on Global Settings. In Global Settings, you've got your internal IP address and your external IP address, and you want to make sure that you set at least your internal IP address to the internal IP address of the PBExact system. The external IP address you can set if you want, but only if you're actually going to be connecting phones in from the outside world. If you're not connecting phones in from the outside world, you can leave that field blank. Also on this page, notice the phone admin password. So this is the password that is going to change on all of your phones when they are provisioned to PBExact. So it's set to 222.222 by default. So for instance, if your phone is typically admin as the username and password, it's now going to be admin 222.222 once it's provisioned to the PBExact. You can set that password to anything that you want, and once that has been done, go ahead and click Save Global down in the bottom right-hand corner. Okay, so now that our global settings have been saved, I'm going to pull out the tray on the right-hand side again, and I want to click on Sangoma under Brands, because the next thing we need to do is edit our default Sangoma template to make sure that it has the correct internal IP address information. So once you have the templates page up, click on Sangoma Default, and then in the destination address setting, just click the internal button. So by default, when you first come in here, you're going to see __internal__. You want to click on internal, and then that should change the destination address to your internal IP address, to the internal IP address that you just set in the global settings. That's also going to change your provisioning server address to the same internal IP address. You can leave this on TFTP for now, or you can change it to HTTP. It really doesn't matter at this point in the setup. Once you're done, go ahead and click Apply to save those settings. Okay, so let's set up our S300 first. Here I am at the PBX admin dashboard, and I'm going to click on Modules and go over to Extensions. We're going to go ahead and make this phone extension 4000, so I want to edit extension 4000. Edit. Once the extension details are up on the screen, you want to click on the Other tab and then find the Endpoint section. It should be the first section on the Other tab. For brand, we're going to select Sangoma. For MAC address, we're going to enter in the same MAC address that we entered in previously. For template, we're going to take Sangoma default. This is okay for now. I'm going to show you how to set up the Sangoma templates in our next video. The model of the phone is the S300, and we're just going to leave it on account 1. So go ahead and hit Submit, followed by Apply Config, and now it is time to plug this phone in. It's going to reach out to Sangoma's redirect server, and then it will connect over to the PBExact server, download its configuration information, and then come up registered as extension 4000. Okay, so my S300 came up and it's now registered with the server, but just to double check, let's run an echo test. An echo test is a good way to check if a phone is registered to a server, and it also allows you to test two-way audio as well as audio latency. So to run an echo test in PBExact, you want to run *43, which is the feature code for the echo test. So I'm going to dial *43 and hit send.
You are about to enter an echo test. In this mode, everything you say will be repeated back to you just as...
Okay, so I'm not going to go any further, but just getting Allison Smith's voice tells me that I am connected to the PBExact server with this phone. Okay, so let's move on to the S500 phone. Now this phone we're going to do a little bit differently. For this phone, we've already added the MAC address into our Sangoma partner portal. However, we're not going to assign an extension manually to this phone. We're going to let this phone come up. It's going to hit the redirect server, and it's going to say, oh, I'm supposed to be over here, the IP address of the PBExact UC. And then it's going to download a base configuration, which gives it the administrator password that I've set, some other general preset information based on the Sangoma template, but it's not going to assign an extension number. Instead, I'm going to get two buttons, one that says Login Internal for logging in on the LAN, and one that says Login External for logging in across the WAN. So let's go ahead and reboot this phone. We're going to get it up to that point, and then I will show you how to log into the phone as extension 4001 once it's up and running. Okay, so here we can see the phone has a Login Internal and a Login External button. I'm going to go ahead and say Login Internal. And it's going to ask me for the extension number, which is 4001. 1, and then I'm going to press down, and the password is 1234. This is the voicemail password, and I'm going to hit done. There we go. So now we can see that the phone just provisioned itself, and it's now going to reboot. Okay, the phone is now up. Let's go ahead and try to make a test call. We're going to do *43 and send.
You are about to enter an echo test. In this mode, everything you say will be repeated back to you.
And there's our echo test. So we know this phone is now registered. Okay, so finally, let's set up our S700 phone. Now for this phone, we're not going to use the Sangoma Zero Touch provisioning, but we're going to use DHCP option 66 to tell the phone where to get its configuration information. Setting up DHCP option 6 is going to vary a lot depending on the type of firewall or the type of DHCP server that you have. So I'm not going to cover how to set up DHCP option 66 in this video, and we're going to assume that option 66 is already set up and functioning properly. So the first thing that you want to do to get this phone associated with an extension is open up that extension's extension details. Once you are editing the extension details, click on the Other tab, and we're going to fill out the Endpoint Manager section much like we did with the S300. So for brand, we're going to say this is a Sangoma phone. The MAC address is scanned in with my barcode scanner. We're going to use the default template. Again, we'll go over the Endpoint Manager settings in the next video. And then for model, we're going to say S700, and we're going to leave this as account 1. So we're going to say submit and apply config. Once we click apply config, a configuration file for this phone is created on the PBExact server based off of this phone's MAC address. So the next time we reboot this phone, it will boot up, it will get its IP address information from DHCP, it will also receive option 66 information from DHCP, which tells the phone, hey, go over to the PBExact server located at this IP address to receive some configuration information. Then the phone reaches out to that location, downloads its config, and then comes up as extension 4002 in this case. Okay, so there we go. After a reboot, this phone has now come up as extension 4002. Let's run our echo test. *43, send.
You are about to enter an echo test. In this...
And there we go. So now all 3 of our extensions have been set up for use with the PBExact UC server. The final thing we're going to cover in this video is how to hook up the EXP100 to either the S700 or S500 telephone. There are 2 parts to this. First of all, we have to physically connect the EXP100 to the S700 or S500, and then second, we have to tell the phone that we have connected the EXP100 so that it knows it exists and that it can pass information over to the external device. All right, let's get started with the physical installation. Okay, so first we're going to physically connect this device. I'm going to flip this over, remove the stand, and use the included connector to connect these 2 together physically. Now these connect together with thumb screws. You don't need any sort of screwdriver or anything to do this. Okay, once those are connected, we have 2 different cables that we need to hook up. We have a network cable and a power cable. Now the power cable is to draw power to the EXP100 from the S700 or S500, but you can also power this with the included AC adapter. So we're going to plug in the power cable, and then this plugs into the port labeled EXT. As we can see, immediately the EXP100 turns on when I did that. The next step is to use the included network cable. You plug it into the uplink port, or the port that is closest to the S700 or S500, and then it plugs into the port labeled PC, which is essentially the pass-through port of the gigabit switch on the back of this phone. Finally, you just put the stands back on so that they can stand up straight. When you first connect up the EXP100, there's going to be an error displayed on the screen because the phone does not yet know about it. So the next thing you need to do is log into the Endpoint Manager, and for whatever extension you have attached the EXP100 to, you need to basically modify that extension to tell it that the EXP100 exists. Okay, so let's take a look here. We're going to start off in the Endpoint Manager. So I'm going to go Modules, and then I'm going to pull it down to Endpoint Manager. In the Endpoint Manager, I first want to set up a couple of buttons on my EXP100 just to make sure that I know that it's working right. In order to do that, I click on the Sangoma brand, and then once the brand pops up, I click on the Sangoma default template. I click on the Models tab, and I click on EXP100-1. So this is the first configuration of an EXP100. In this case, we have a couple of BLF keys that I've set for the other two extensions. This is extension 4002, so I gave it BLF keys for extension 4000 and extension 4001. That's fine. We're going to go ahead and save that. And then we want to save the template as well. Next, pull out the tray from the right-hand side and click on Extension Mapping. Find the extension that has the EXP100 connected and click the Edit button. And then for Expansion Module 1, you want to select EXP100-1. That's the one that we just configured in the template that this phone is assigned. We're going to say Save, Rebuild Configs, and Update Device, and click Apply. What this is going to do is it's going to tell the phone, hey, you've got an EXP100. Here's the configuration for that EXP100. Now go ahead and reboot yourself so that you get those changes. When the phone comes back up after the reboot, it should have the two BLF keys that I set up already. So we're going to take a look as soon as this phone comes back up, make sure that those BLF keys are working. Okay, so here we can see the EXP100 is connected and it's working. It's downloaded its configuration. I have two BLF keys, extension 4000 and extension 4001. Now, if I pick up extension 4001 and I dial, for instance, the echo test, we should see this light turn red, indicating that extension 4001 is now in use. Once it becomes available once again, when I hang up, the light goes back to green. So I hope you enjoyed this video. This has been PB Exact Essentials Part 2. Please join me for Part 3, where we're going to discuss setting up the Endpoint Manager in great detail. Thank you so much for watching.